Hi guys, today we're going to start working on two-step equations. So I'm going to call this one two-step equations part 1. And we are going to go through and do some solving on these. It is going to take us 2 steps to be able to get the variable by itself. So our job is still going to be, just like I wrote in the middle of this, it's still going to be about solving. So when I'm done, I'm going to have some variable equal to some number. That's my job. So one thing I just want to remind you about is that when we dealt with order of operations, you might have seen something like this. People talk about that as, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It might be written maybe a different way, but that saying, the reason they use that saying is because it helps remind them of the order they need to solve things in. Parentheses, and then exponents, and multiply and divide, and then add and subtract. Here's the deal when you're doing solving. You actually go backwards for the most part. So you're going to work to add or subtract to get variables alone. Then you're going to multiply and divide. So it is unusual that it's kind of the backwards version of please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So let's take a look at this first one. So I ultimately want to get this by itself. So I'm going to get rid of anything added or subtracted first. So that means I want to get rid of this. So the opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3. Whatever I do to one side of the equal, I do to the other. That cancels. So I'm left with 5x. And then over here, 8 minus 3 is going to be 5. Now, to get this x alone, I have to get rid of this 5. So 5 times x is what's on this side. So the opposite of multiplying by 5 is dividing by 5. So this cancels down to 1, and you're left with x. And then 5 divided by 5 is going to be 1. Okay, now, I'm going to go to the next one, so I'm going to turn this. Here is my next one for B. So if I look at this, I have 3 times x plus 2 equals 23. So if I want to get x alone, I got to get rid of this. So the opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. So remember, both sides of the equals. This cancels. I'm left with 3x. 23 minus 2 is 21. Then if I want to get x alone, I need to get rid of this. So the opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. Both sides. These cancel down to 1, so I'm left with just 1x. And then 21 divided by 3 is 7. Okay, let's keep going. I want you to have lots of examples of these to look back at because you're going to have to practice these. There's no two ways about it. So on this one, I have -5 equals 7 plus 3r. So a lot of kids don't like this because they like the variable to be on this side. So I want you to know that I can actually take these and switch them. So I can do 7 plus 3r equals -5. Now, the only thing I'm going to say about the switching, which is perfectly fine if that's what you want to do, is that if this is 7 plus 3r, it's got to be 7 plus 3r on this side. You can't just, screw around with the order. Now, I'm going to focus on getting this alone. So if I want r alone, anything added or subtracted, so this 7 is not part of that. I'm going to get rid of that. So first of all, I assume that's a positive 7. So the opposite of positive 7 is -7. So that's a reminder that you can subtract 7 from both sides of the equal. So those cancel to 0. I'm left with 3r. And -5 minus 7 is -12. And then if I want to get r alone, I've got to get rid of this 3. So that's 3 times r. So the opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. These cancel down to 1, so it's an r. And then -12 divided by 3 is going to be -4. Okay, let's keep going. So I have on this one -6 minus 2m equals 10. So here's what I want to get alone. So I need to get rid of this. So the opposite of -6 is +6. So that's my clue. I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So I have -2m equals 16. Now, if I read this part, it's -2 times m. So the opposite of multiplying by -2 is dividing by -2. Now, make sure that it's negative because you want to make sure you can cancel the negative and the number. So if you don't do the negative with it, you're going to have an issue. 16 divided by -2 is -8. Okay, let's go to E, and then we'll flip this over and do a little bit more practice. I think we have 2 on the back. So on this one, I have a plus 2 divided by 2 equals -1. Now, if I have any hope of getting this part alone, I can't have this divided by 2 there. So I'm going to have to get rid of that. So the opposite of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2. So those 2 can cancel. So I'm left with a plus 2. And then -1 times 2 is -2. Okay, now if I want to get a by itself, I got to get rid of this. So the opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. So -2 minus 2 is going to be -4. Okay, we have 2 on the back that we're going to look at, and then we're going to move on. So let me turn this back the way it's supposed to be. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. So you'll notice that I have done the same solving 2-step equations in the middle, and I have 2 equations that we're going to look at. So I have 4 times x minus 1 equals 31. So I want to get this by itself. So I'm getting rid of this first. So the opposite of subtracting 1 is adding 1. So I have 4x equals, and 31 plus 1 is 32. Okay, then, to get x alone, I'm going to have to get rid of this. So this is 4 times x. So the opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. So these cancel down to 1, so you're left with 1x. And 32 divided by 4 is 8. Okay, here's our last one. So I have x divided by 7 plus 5 equals 9. So I want to get this part by itself, so I'm going to get rid of this. So the opposite of adding 5 is subtracting 5. So these cancel to 0. Left with x plus 7 on that side. And then 9 minus 5 is 4. So if I want to get rid of this, that's x divided by 7. So the opposite of dividing by 7 is multiplying by 7. So that cancels, you're left with x. And 4 times 7 is 28. Okay, we'll keep going with these the next time when we're together.